Okay, and this is the second presentation this week. We're going to talk a little bit more about motivation, but mostly we're going to talk about the practical aspects of management. So how do we actually assign resources, get them loaded in, level them out, those kinds of things that you have to know as part of running the project. So again, we're talking about communication and people management in this module. Team is our most critical resource, our most critical asset. And their success or failure and how we manage that team will determine the success or failure of the project. So let's talk a little about just human resource planning itself. And what this means if you step back into the project plan from the objective standpoint, we're identifying project roles, responsibilities, and reporting relationships. People that we will assign to execute different parts of the statement of work. Outputs of human resource planning as the process are going to be your project organizational charts, staffing management plans, responsibility matrices, and resource histograms. So how do you go about assigning responsibilities to people from that statement of work? Start with the RFP, whatever our scope statement is. Define how the work's going to get done from there. You break it into the WBS that we talked about, where you get these assignable work units. And if you remember when we talked about scope in the first week, those work units have to be assignable to a particular, they have to have some responsibility assigned to them. That means they're big enough, they're small enough that we can assign them to a person. Then you assign that work in that organizational breakdown structure. One of the tools that we use is this thing called the responsibility assignment matrix. And this is an easy way to look at, especially in a large WBS, who's going to be responsible for performing what work. And then you have these little words like responsible and performing and all these things, you assign the letters to them. But basically for each statement of work here, you're going to have somebody who's responsible for that or performing that work, and then other people who are assigned to know about it and those kinds of things. But for at least every single task, you're going to have one P in this, and that person is going to be assigned within the schedule. So for here, we've got a list of various tasks within the WBS. And we've got basically, as we go through, we make sure that there's someone assigned to cover every single WBS task. When you staff plans, then resource histograms that basically say, here's the number of people I'm going to need based on the activity that the schedule says is going on at any given particular point. So a staffing management plan describes when and how people are going to be added and taken off the project team. A resource histogram is sort of this column version of the chart that shows the number of resources assigned to a project over time. This is a key tool for managing programs, especially when we get across portfolio management, where you've got multiple projects going on at once and you need multiple software people, and how you're going to allocate them at different times. This is a critical element of that. How do you acquire the project team? You want to assign the appropriate type and number of people to any particular project at the appropriate time. That's called resource loading. So the amount individual resources can exist in an existing schedule requires during any particular time period as the resource load. I've got an example over here on the right of what's called over-allocation. Now I'm going to be looking for this in your projects. When you assign people to these WBS tasks and then schedule those tasks, you get in positions where you've actually accidentally scheduled people for more than one thing at a time. Number one, that goes against what we talked about with multitasking. But also what happens is it just assigns people over projects they can't do. People can work an 8-hour day. They can't work 16, 24 hours, 48 hours a day. I mean, some of that stuff gets weird. But the project will let you do that. But it'll give you red if it starts to do this. So what you've got here is an over-allocation aspect. Go through the resource planning, the team documentation, and Microsoft Project Schedule, and it'll point out where you've over-allocated particular resources. Sometimes you have to go through and do resource leveling. This is a technique for resolving some of those resource conflicts, and this by delaying tasks. Main purpose of resource leveling is to create a smoother usage and allocation. You might want to be able to do this if you have a lot of flexibility over the schedule. You might want to do this to make sure you have a good team schedule load. If you can't bring people on and off a lot and you need to sort of map some people over a period of time, that's what resource leveling is for. It's going to, by definition, though, muck with the schedule. So you've got to be very careful that you're not adding time period to the overall schedule. Back to reward and recognition. So once we've got people going, we need to keep them motivated. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about recognition systems. There are team-based reward and recognition systems that are good for promoting teamwork. So focusing on the teams when they accomplish a specific goal, some particular milestone, an MVP that gets finished. Those are things that are key for motivating teams and getting them to sort of act as a team. But we also want to reward individuals for singular efforts above and beyond on the job, more than what that team did. And that gives someone some intrinsically motivated, especially, it gives them that recognition that, yeah, they're doing a great job with what they are doing. Individual rewards can also, though, decrease motivation, especially if you do it enough that it becomes expected and they lose that intrinsic valuation of it. If they start to believe that if I do this, I get a reward for it, then that becomes extrinsic. And remember what we talked about in the last presentation. You want people to be intrinsically motivated by the challenge, by the job, by the vision of what we're trying to accomplish. So only do something after something's done and in an unexpected manner, if that can be accomplished. And then allow team members to mentor each other and help with project goals. This is part of the longer-term goal of the organization, to let them sort of mentor and help each other out. That builds that overall environment, that development environment, the kind of place that people want to work at. So day-to-day management in the project team, all this stuff gets wrapped in your day-to-day management. The explicit sort of mapping and leveling of the resources, as well as what are we doing on a day-to-day basis with our team and making sure they're staying motivated. You have to lead teams in performing various project management activities with that continual assessment of their performance going on as well. You have to decide then as a manager if changes are going to be requested to the project, if there's going to be preventative actions or corrective actions applied, if updates are needed to the project management plan, organizational processes are needed to be added. Techniques that you're going to be using as a manager, this is kind of common sense stuff, but observation and conversation, manage by walking around, seeing what's going on, talking to people, getting a feel for what's going on at the surface level, but then also under the surface, what's the team feeling and what they're doing. Frequent performance appraisals, frequent and candid, are very good at that. Making sure that you do conflict management quickly. Don't let conflicts fester. Get out in front of them quick, because when they become a part of who people are, then they become much more hard and difficult to get through. And make sure you're running the issue logs. Be there for the team. Be part of the project, and make sure you're helping them to solve the real problems. This execution process, like we talked about, those 5 main processes, the opening, the controlling, monitoring, controlling, the execution, the closing. Execution is the big one. This is where all the money goes, most of the money goes in the project. It involves managing, performing the work. Its application area of the project directly affects project execution, because the projects of this project are produced during this execution phase. So everything that goes into testing, everything that goes into closing out is going to be created in this phase. All the planning and everything is intertwined, so they're inseparable. Those who do the work, this is why those who do the work should be a part of the planning, so that they have some input coming in and they have that ownership. Again, that empowerment to say, this is what I thought we should do, and this is what I'm executing on today. So leadership during this phase is important. Obviously, this is the biggest part of the phase. This is your example to demonstrate the importance of creating good project plans. It's an opportunity to demonstrate the importance of creating good culture. Your culture can help your execution. Number one, it provides guidelines and templates, tracking performance based on plans. And you still need to, though, as a leader within execution, as much as you've got plans and you've got guidelines and all this stuff from the company, you need to be able to decide when it's time to break rules, when it's time to sort of push things through, to go outside the process to make something happen. Those are important skills. That's leadership. Your team recognizes that. Those kinds of skills, as well as communication, those political skills, knowing people, being able to get things done because you know people, those are the kinds of things that will help keep the project moving forward. And that's why good project managers, experienced project managers, typically are a requirement to having a successful project. So that's what we wanted to talk about from the application, more technical application of management this week. We have one more presentation. We're going to focus really on just the communications aspects themselves.